Welcome back, my dear Boolaws. It is time once again, and it is I, Krown, to bring to you news of price action from far and wide. And we got plenty to talk about today, all jokes aside. Actually, that's not a joke at all, but what is a joke is some of the price action that we are seeing across the board here. There is plenty to talk about, of course, and I do want to put the focus on the Krown trading application right now. But first, before that, I would like to wish you the best, and the happiest of the happiest. It would be a good time for that, especially during this early morning hour of ungodly times. Looking at the open interest, Bitcoin more or less, or the Bitcoin market more or less steady here from yesterday to today, as Bitcoin does put in that nice base just directly above 11,000. Which is even above the medium-term range we spoke about from yesterday, which is actually kind of switching to the long-term range to the downside at about 10.8, 10.9. So that is still very much relevant here. But the big focus is once again going to be on traditional markets as they do set the tone. And continuation seems to be the name of the game as of right now. Bitcoin, or sorry, not Bitcoin, but NASDAQ making new all-time highs, as we spoke about, was likely this week. And, well, where do we end up? Only Boolah Jesus knows. Looking at the fear and greed index, taking up a few points as well. So that is interesting to see the greed tick up a little bit, while Bitcoin is more or less sideways. But this does fit into the narrative that we've been speaking about, saying that Bitcoin sideways within this region is more or less constructive and would still have a bias boner to the upside. Looking at the Bitcoin dominance, still more or less stock standard from that 16.5% region, which is good and indicative of the overall health around the general crypto sphere right now, as Bitcoin is setting in a base. Most alts are actually benefiting versus Satoshi's. Link is going to the fucking moon apparently, which we should actually talk about today as well. And that's kind of what we saw actually around the end of 2017. When Bitcoin rallies, typically takes the reins, but when Bitcoin comes back down and consolidates in a nice tight range, or relatively tight range, we could say, most alts actually following through with it. So we're not seeing bifurcation in this market right now. We're actually seeing most things follow with, which is good, which is what you want to have during your upwards rotations. Anyways, I'm just looking at this across the board. Did I miss anything just yet? I don't know. Well, fair enough. Let's actually go check out the data tab right now. I'm curious what the global funding rate is printing right now. I'm imagining it's coming back down to parity. And yes, indeed, 0.01% for the global funding rate, which is pretty much inconsequential. Yes, you are paying to hold longs, which is pretty much par for the course. But more importantly, you're not paying very much, which we didn't even get up that high, even on that drive on the 28th of last month, July, only to a 0.06 read, which realistically, this only becomes like a legitimate consideration when it gets above 0.1 and 0.1%, that is, and even then, like that's like the first big warning flag. 0.15% is where we typically do find interplays with actual price action, but it does have a rather large range there. By the way, if you're wondering what all the noise is going on right here, I don't know if you guys can hear this, but there's apparently like workers just smashing down on my roof currently. So instead of the kitchen forks, motherfuckers, we got construction motherfuckers. Well, fair enough. Hopefully they're doing a good job. Everything else, I don't really have too much to make out of this just yet. We still need to gather more data on this overall, but I do want to check out the indicators tab that we have here as well, and we can see that things have come down quite significantly during this consolidation phase, which would be indicative more or less of the health, or sorry, the bias that consolidation here is more or less fine, and it looks like actually things are starting to tick up back once again. So all of this again is free on the Krown Trading application, which can be found again at app.krowntrading.net. So with that said, let's go on into the actual price action analysis. And NASDAQ futures making new all-time highs in the early morning hours, and we do have, or I did derive a target for this yesterday. I do believe it's a little bit north of 11,320-ish region. I don't have any extensions there, so to speak of right now. Perhaps we could do a very small one right now. I don't really want to fuck around with this chart too much, but I suppose that this extension right here is no longer that. I mean, it's relevant, of course, but it's just not. It's not really like relevant to what we're looking at right here. So I'll do a different one just to see if it lines up with anything. I can't promise anything here, and I do these videos fresh in the morning, and it does seem to have a little bit of interplay with it. I want to see if the 2 extension does meet up with this measure move. Kind of, sort of, not really though. It says 11,420, which is a good number, but and I have my measure move here at about 11,320. There's no really good way to do this right now, as anytime that you are in new all-time high territories, you're basically in price discovery, and you can use these things as guides and whatnot, but to judge pullbacks from here on and outwards until we put in like the next macro top, I'd really just be looking at divergence plays on medium and higher term timeframes, nothing less than that. Things just get a little bit crazy, and typically once you get to as you get to the climax, things continually get more and more crazy. So I do stand by what I've been saying for a while now. I do think that we have another leg here on traditional markets, just across the board more or less, and then we'll come back and play the game of is this the next macro top or not. Let me make sure that I'm recording. I am recording, and the microphone's working, so we're off to a good start this morning, I guess. Anyways, I would essentially remain bullish on this asset, or basically on techs in general, as long as we're closing daily dildos, especially above about 10,950. So as long as we're above there, I don't think that there's any real hard question that new all-time highs are just going to continue to make new all-time highs here, with preemptive targets between about 11,300. Let's just call it 11,350. Cut those 2 areas right to the middle. And then maybe like a short-term pullback there. But yes, that is my disposition. As long as it's above 10,950, can come back down and test there. I think it kind of already did yesterday on Monday. And the weekly is very obviously continuation as well. And momentum oscillators on the weekly do say that we actually have quite a bit to go. Perhaps looking at weekly RSI bouncing off the bullish control zone, I do look at that as more or less healthy. Yes, there will be potentially bearish divergence being formed here, but there's a lot of space that that could potentially be filled out before that actually does get confirmed. And more importantly, as you can see, the trend is your friend until the end of the trend, and this is now confirmed as another higher low. Yet again, another higher low at 10,450. So big ranges here, kind of like Bitcoin, as this one does continue upwards and onwards. But I think that it's very, 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 very important to reflect on this one in the general health of the traditional markets, as it does seem to have long-term macro correlations with Bitcoin and just the general markets across all the worlds. Yes, there's going to be some outliers here and there, but I really strongly believe this. A rising tide lifts all ships, and we are all connected. And this is why I really always like to push back against the people who perpetuate this narrative of like it's like the crypto cultists versus the world, or like I'm a Tesla man, so I hate whatever you're supposed to hate if you're a Tesla gang member. It's silliness, and it's actually really disgusting to be quite honest with you, because it just shows that people don't understand that we're all on the same fucking team. And if you think that traditional markets coming down and going to fucking catastrophe levels is going to be good for whatever pet rock or whatever pet cryptocurrency you have, it's very unlikely to be true. At least that's been the trend for the last over 10 years. So this one blasting off once again, I'd say is more or less good for Bitcoin. Weekly Stokes pointed back up. Now, of course, they are kind of getting to a little bit more of an extreme level, but perhaps a little bit more to go. Historically speaking, this has called some decent tops in the past, and that would imply that we have another leg up to the upside here. I think it's also very enlightening to look at historical volatility percentile, which is essentially in a contraction phase as price action rises to new all-time highs. I think that this is going to be coming down quite for quite some time, and that does imply that this contraction phase is likely to lead up with price action, resulting to the upside during this phase. So this would actually imply that maybe this run lasts deep into the end of this year or early next year. Now, of course, this is a little bit too preemptive to really do that right now, just because we want like 3 points of data at the very least for something like that. But it does seem to be lining up with that on a weekly, because it just is that high of a time frame where we don't really get that often of a very high historical volatility percentile read anyways, and whenever we do, it is very consistent with marking off major pivots on the market, typically bottoms in this case. So looking at the daily as well, more or less the same. We do see that daily RSI is testing the edge of the bullish control zone here. I do look at this as more or less a you could look at this as like a flag consolidation here, which would have the implications of of testing the upside, obviously. But of course, as with momentum oscillators, I don't really trust like measured moves or anything like that. It just kind of sets in another bias. But at the end of the day, the trend is your friend, and that is that is what your P&L is marked off of as far as price action goes. So still looking fine to me. Again, with the critical area being moved up to 10,950 now. As long as you're above there, generally bullish. If it does break below there, I look for an extension back down to the 21 at about 10,700-ish low. Looking at E-mini futures for SPY, looks like continuation. I still stick with my 3,336 or 3,340 target, whatever this gap is right here. And this one looking more or less healthy as it just chugs along, along upwards. And again, we kind of derived that target Jesus Christ, like 3 weeks ago now. It looks like middle of July is kind of when that one got initiated. But things just take time, and this is constructive behavior as far as I'm concerned. Looking at daily RSI, I'm going to be getting the bullish control zone, or testing at least the bullish control zone today. Looking at daily Stokes, does have another drive up here, very likely, but typically does find some nice highs within this region. But that would imply that it gets this run does get extended here. And again, same thing here on historical volatility percentile. This is actually the daily, and this one does seem to work. And this one does have enough data points, and it looks like I've already got this trend line in here. But overall, I'd be looking for this contraction phase to kind of fill out this area, and it actually does have the same read as what we saw in Nasdaq futures for the weekly, which is very interesting. So that does provide some clarity on that situation. And does this run last for another few months? Probably yes. Probably around I'd start to really consider that around the time of U.S. elections is when things could potentially really turn around, maybe even early next year, that being 2021. But for right now, up and at 'em is the name of the game. And same thing here as well. If we see SPY break below, let's call it 325. Wow, I'm dyslexic as fuck. But 325, kind of the magical number for that one. If that level does break, I would switch to a short-term and medium-term bearish. I'd be looking for a quick move down to 323, probably bounce there with continuation to the 55, a little bit lower at like 315-ish region. But for right now, I'm not really looking for that to happen. This is more or less a melting up right now. So let's go check out Bitcoin and let's see how this is. Or actually, do we want to do that before looking at this? Hold on. Let's start off with Mr. Buterol today. He is looking girthy on the weekly. So remember when we spoke about the Challenger bands on the weekly for Bitcoin, they actually failed on spot price action to close above the top Challenger band on last week's closure. The CMEs did, and I do believe that the CMEs do hold more weight, and I believe that they will essentially set the tone, and it's more or less a formality right now. But to put things into greater perspective here with Mr. Buterol, we got our first open and closure above the top side weekly Challenger band here as well. At the end of last week. And again, just like Bitcoin on the weekly Challenger bands, this actually does get all the macro trends pretty much perfectly, to be fair. Going all the way back to the genesis from Mr. Buterol, which you actually have to go to a chart on Poloniex, I believe, to get this one. But it would go all the way back to January 2016, grabbing this one right here with that first move and closure above the top side Challenger band. That's 1,000% move. Once it loses it, well, it goes into some nice sideways consolidation. It ends up being constructive and then gets ready for the next run right here. Another 3,000% move to the upside. And then this one right here probably doesn't look like all that much, but I'd beg to differ with you that that's a 200% move or over 200% move to the upside. And this guy right here, again, same sort of thing, as we get another about 100% doubling of price action. This one over here, a little bit more of a fake out, of course. As a greater macro trend is more or less sloppy and in macro downs essentially, did mark off a lower high, but this one over here breaking to new highs and reversing the weekly trend to once again an uptrend. We do see some implications, bringing all those things together, both with trend breaking the trend on the weekly, plus closing above the top side Challenger bands and getting more importantly an open and closure above that. historically speaking, it's more akin to these ones over here. So I do still think that it's gonna get another drive up towards 450 or for 490ish region, and I'll be looking for a medium-term top being put in within that region. And looking at the daily right here, it does look more or less like continuation right now with a very obvious management point. So it's not to say that I'm going to be 100% right about these things, and that's not what TA is about. I don't have a fucking crystal ball, and I don't claim to have a crystal ball, and this is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor, and this is the furthest thing that you could ever possibly conceive of from financial advice. SEC, if you're listening, take that into consideration. anyways, looking at this level right here, as long as Mr. Brutal is above that, I don't see any real issues with price action, and I'll just be looking for it to kind of float upwards and onwards. Does that bode well for Bitcoin? Probably yes. It kind of has been leading this run to the upside, and maybe even to a greater extension Link has been. So perhaps we'll look at Link after this instead of rolling it to Bitcoin, because Bitcoin's been more or less steady within the range that we spoke about for like the last few days, sideways and nice and steady. Well, for now. Anyways, if it does break 370 to the downside, then yes, we could talk about some downside displeasures. Targets would very likely be extended towards, at the very least, 345 region, probably bounce there, and then overall extension before the next sort of major bounce would be around 320ish region is where I'd be looking towards. But for right now, like I said, as long as it's above about 375, more or less looking for this one to give another try to the upside. Yes, there is bearish divergence forming on the daily right here. In fact, it could even form on this current dildo, and we actually do have a potential head and shoulders on the RSI being printed right now, so keep that in mind. This actually could be a damn good signal. If there is anything that is causing concern, I suppose, is the terminology that I want to use here for the upside, is the next move below the below the critical zone, below the 80 read right here. Depending upon how you mark it off, some people use a 70, some people use an 80. I'm using an 80 right now, as I feel like it's just been getting things better overall. Should have saved that for the crypto TA nerd session. Anyways, fair enough. So looking at this area right here, if it does break below this level, which by the way, we can actually look at what price action would need to close below in order to get that. And let's see. Enter the price for RSI. No, we actually want to get the 80 read right there. So we'll do right there, 80. Okay, and let's see. Yeah, we need to close below 385 spot 40 cents. In order for that to be confirmed. So it essentially is saying that, Mr. Buterol needs to get continuation today, maybe at latest tomorrow. Otherwise, it will naturally start to turn down, and you'll see a lot of the bots and algos start to sell into that shift in momentum on the daily. But for right now, more or less, it is, I would say the main disposition is more upside. We do see historical volatility percentile increasing as price action increases, and that is also in coming along. If we were to look at the actual entropy, it is going down right now as well, I believe, but we'll look at that later. For now, I do want to go check out Mr. Link as well. We didn't really talk about him yesterday because, I don't know, sometimes you just forget, and realistically, man, like, these videos are too fucking long to begin with. I'd be looking for new all-time highs for Link coming into today as well. We spoke about this last week, that it was likely to pop back up to the prior high. Now, making new all-time highs, I would have to say something very unenlightening. Probably going to make new all-time highs after that. I don't really have any real targets for something like this. Could you make a measure move off this? Maybe. I mean, if I don't trust it all that much, but just doing some bad mental math, it'd probably be pointed towards a little bit north of $10. I do want to mark that area off. It is a nice round psychological number, and would it match up with anything else? Well, let's actually take, how should we do this? We could do something kind of nasty like this, and let's see if this lines up. Okay, it actually does line up with the 2.618 extension, or sorry, no, that's where we are right now. No, it does, about $10.50. Yeah, interesting, very interesting. Anywhere between two, well, we are at the 2.414. I don't really think that that's all that relevant. Does this line up with other things well? The 2 is getting this target right here before that major move down. Yes. This is getting the base. Yes. This one's getting the breakout out of this consolidation. Yeah. So, it does look like it's getting respected. So perhaps it is outlining some algo driven targets. So I'll actually move it up there. Again, just doing some bad mental math. Somewhere around there looks about right. And that would imply that Link has some more to go here, which I do want to check out the momentum oscillators just to see if this agrees. And bearish divergence is going to be forming on the weekly. Obviously, it's going to be very difficult to outdo this number right here. Is it possible? Yes, of course, but probabilistically wise, I'd say that's wow, that's the highest that it's ever been. So fair enough. So I'd imagine that, if you do see that target met and then a lower high on the weekly RSI being printed, very, very likely that is going to be the next medium term top. Not to say that the run's done for forever, but, likely does go into a nice sideways consolidation, which for Link, it just gets reaccumulated. That's been happening for 3 years fucking straight. This is what the real chart looks like. And we started looking at this one like in summer of 2018, and it's been the darling of the market, ever since I started. I have no fucking clue what it does. I've never owned a Link. I've been singing its praises for 3 years now, basically, or sorry, over 2 years now, and and I feel like a fool for not owning any, because it's been probably the best chart in cryptocurrency land, and looks like it has a little bit more here, with of course a failure point back down below about 890. So as long as it maintains 890 breakout, I'm looking for that $10.5 target to get hit overall. How long does that take? Who fucking knows? I don't think that there's any relevant way to actually even judge that, but I'd be looking at momentum oscillators plus divergence plays plus those extensions that we just looked at. All right, let's go check out Bitcoin now. I'm gonna pull up a completely new chart. I want to rechart this whole baby and do it nice and fresh, because we've actually been able to set in a nice range here now. And remember after, I think it was Saturday or Sunday. Was it Saturday? I think it was Saturday. Saturday we saw this. Was it Saturday? Yeah, it was Saturday. We saw this massive girthy red dildo party starting all the way down, all the way up from 12,100 or above 12,100 all the way down to 10,550. And we said after that likely things were to move sideways within a range between about 10.9 and 11.5. And I believe that we've actually seen that happen rather orderly here, and as I've been saying, the more sideways that goes here, the better a base is, or the bigger that a base is built, and this is more or less constructive as long as that condition is met. And so what I'll do here now is basically do the same thing that I had before, but now that we have actual price action resulting after that, it does really add on to the what's it called? What's the word that I'm looking for? The clarity. No, not clarity. No, not confluence. What's the other C word? Fuck. Who knows, man? I don't know how to speak English, so thank you for bearing with me. As long as we can understand each other, it's all good. But let's put in a nice little blue box right there. And I do believe that, as long as this condition is met, which is basically the 10.8 to 10.9 region, this is to be considered as constructive and likely to resolve to another test to 11,900 to 12,000-ish region overall. In fact, looking at the medium and higher, looking at the medium term timeframes, I actually do think that Bitcoin will be testing up there probably, end of this week, maybe even early next week. Again, I don't really trust in timing these sorts of things, but we can come up with some levels that are relevant here. And looking to the upside, it's still basically the same thing as yesterday, which is a 4-hour dildo closure above 11,420, or a wick above, I believe it was Sunday's high right here at just under 11,500. If one of those conditions is met, I would be looking for extension up to the top side resistance, which is essentially between about let's do it out actually very meticulously here, but we do have a very obvious liquid zone right here. This one's difficult to kind of judge. It is a little bit larger just because it is a more higher term time frame range, which does have greater implications. It would be about a $200 range between 11.8 and 12,000. So it would insinuate a test back up there. Personally speaking, I do think that a test back up there very likely does result in actual breakage of this region. But at the end of the day, would I rather see, or would I feel more confident? That's the other C word I was looking for, confidence. Would I feel more confident with a closure above this region, even 11,850, with driving targets towards the $12,500 to $13,000 marker? Yes, absolutely. But technically speaking, just by getting back to this region, I do think that it very likely just fall through to the upside, and that would obviously be first spurned about by this move above 11,500, or a 4-hour dildo closure again above 11,420-ish region is kind of where I have the bottom of the short-term, the medium-term liquid zone right here. So just like that to the downside, obviously very, very important to talk about as well, just because nothing's guaranteed in this market, and while I am angled towards the upside right now, I do think that, anything's fucking possible, and and if you live long enough have, the market will teach you that lesson over and over again, especially if you fight with it. And I can tell you that from experience. But below this level right here, 10,800, I do think that there would be a bounce towards, 10.5 region right here. However, I think that it'd just be that. Ultimately, I'd be looking for Bitcoin to come back down below 10,000 and find another, and find another short-term, medium-term low somewhere about between somewhere around 9,800-ish regions where I'd have this area marked off right here. I have it officially between 98 and 98 and 99 actually. So I'll throw one down there as well. I'm not looking for this one to happen, but hey, if 10.8 does get broken, I would look for ultimately a move down here with a bounce along the way at 10.5-ish region, maybe another small one at 10.250 as well. Just kind of cutting these ranges to short-term levels. So, depending upon what time frame that you're looking at, it might be relevant, might not be relevant. That's why we try to talk about, most things that I think might be potentially helpful, or at least hopefully it's helpful in some way. Looking at the daily right here as well, we do have hidden bullish divergence in play as well, which can potentially be confirmed today with basically the same sort of criteria that we just spoke about for resolving the medium-term time frame range. And the points that I'm talking about is this level right here versus, does this level right here count? No, I think you'd kind of have to squint your eyes a little bit too much for a daily, but on a 12-hour, it certainly does work, and it actually gets extrapolated much further down all the way to 23rd of July lows, which Bitcoin was actually below 10,000 at that price point. So, the 12-hour saying that it's very likely that we actually do initiate this. Same sort of initiation right to the upside that, that we just spoke about. But overall, the 12-hour has many things going for it. It does have, first and foremost, it has 3 drives of hidden bullish divergence between this point, and then more recently this point right on over here. And then also we can see that 12-hour Stokes have been coming down this whole fucking way. First and foremost, we do have a trend line which has been forming ever since 28th of June coming in this region, which would actually be protecting right against, no, it's much further back than that, late May, which would be defending against the edge of the bearish control zone. So very likely to probably test around there, but I would imagine that unless we actually break below that 10.8 or 10.9 region right here, that's just going to be another opportunity, very, 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 very likely. And then if Bitcoin can take out this liquid zone to the upside right here, or on a 12-hour, if a 12-hour does close above about 11,300, it will actually take out that little small range high right there on a closing basis, and will confirm that hidden bullish divergence. And then I'd be looking for a move at the at the very least to 11,500. That would obviously take out the last wick high, and I'd really extend that target realistically towards about 11,850 to 12,000 bucks. And we're also going to see 12-hour Stokes probably turn up with that as well. In fact, we can judge exactly that. Credit to Bali for this one, but actually not as generous as what you'd expect. It would show that 12-hour momentum does turn back up above 11,676. That level will very likely come down with the next closure. So I imagine that this is going to be more relevant tomorrow. It could very easily be that Bitcoin has another day within this $500 range in the low 11,000s. I do think that the 10-hour gets these things quite well as well, and I think it's a lot more generous too, as we do see that 10-hour momentum is going to turn back up above 11,136 on the next closure, it's going to maintain to the upside as long as we're above that level, closing in 4 hours and 32 minutes. And because we are in the TA nerd session of this video, I do think that the 10-hour is actually taken the pole position from the 12-hour. We've seen these switch around from the years. So if you were here in 2018, you probably heard me harp on a lot about the 3-hour. That was like the indicator du jour, or of the year. However you say that. On? Is that it? I don't know French. I took French for 3 years in high school, and I can say bonjour. There you go. And not even fucking well. So yes, and then last year, 2019, it was the 12-hour, and now I think actually the 10-hour is precipitating that and taking the pole position. You just see different operators take control of the market essentially, and when you find something that works, one of the things that my mentor always said was, it works until it doesn't. So just keep on keep on using it. And when it stops working, that's the time to adjust, but abuse it, because when someone's in control of the market, you do find that something will just work more often than not. And when you realize that, just go with it and abuse it until it stops working essentially. But the key there is to stop using it when it stops working. So I do have to be very, 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 very forthright. And looking at this right here, it would suggest that yes, as long as we essentially close this next 10-hour dildo above the 21 exponential moving average, which is essentially right at that range, we will see this not only cross back up to the upside, but reject the bearish control zone. And we'll also see this trend line essentially be tested once again, which if we did extend that to the 12-hour, you can imagine that, just drawing all the way back on over here, it's about in the same area. And naturally, the 10-hour should lead the 12-hour. And it's good that we do see this. You don't always see that. I know that it would sound like very obvious, intuitively, but you don't always see that. And it's usually a very good indication that something else is going on in the greater sphere if you don't see that. But right now we do see that, and that would imply that we probably do, assuming that closure is met, that the condition is met, very likely we're going to test back up to the medium term blue box right here, and at that point, is it going to have a chance to break again? Yes. And my criteria for that. I happen to think that if it even tests back up there again, it's probably just going to break, just in line with all the with all the world markets kind of melting up to new highs, and then we can talk about targets back up to 11.8 or 12,000-ish region, and then my opinion on that as well. More so formalities right now than anything else, because remember that we are setting up the weekly closure for Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. If the weekly does close anywhere above 11,550, these last sort of weekly highs here, then that is a macro shift in change behavior, which we've already seen confirmed on a monthly, which obviously matters more because a monthly is taking more data into consideration, and we already have new closing highs. In fact, we have the second highest closing monthly as of last month, July, at 11,356. So is the weekly likely to follow through based off that? Yes, I would say so. And if we go over here to our Bollinger Bands as well, that level is not just confirmed from a long-term fuckery area, but also the top side of the Bollinger Bands on the weekly. And just like we spoke about with Mr. Buterol, the relevancy of the top side Bollinger Bands and kind of living outside of them, while alongside seeing the 20 simple having a positive slope, which is kind of fucking obvious if that is going to happen, although it doesn't always happen. Like, it didn't happen right here, and that obviously got sold into, but after that, yes, it did move with it. But going all the way back to it, anytime that we've seen that sort of a read, here's 165% green dildo to your face. This one's 1,700% move to the upside. This one, 569% move to the upside. This one, there's a series of moves here, but ultimately, as long as it's red in the 20 simple, I mean, that's 6,700% to the upside. More recently, I think this one was like 150 to 200%. And this one's very interesting right here too, because we have a very similar interplay, right? If we look at this, all right, we'll look at that later. Still waiting on some things for that, which I'm actually rather excited about. But if we look at this right here, might as well do it, I guess. Very, 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 very similar. Looking at this as an ascending triangle on that last major reversal, and kind of the same thing right here, a bullish reaccumulation formation being put in. This one more so a continuation formation right here. Yes, you can see typically they are continuation, but sometimes you do see reversals based off them, like you see right here. And then putting on the Bollinger Bands, you see that first move outside the top side Bollinger Band as a 20 simple gets a positive slope. Same thing right here, breaks the horizontal, gets a positive slope, approaching the top side Bollinger Band. We already see it close above on CME, as we spoke about right here. So, again, it's more or less is it a formality for myself, kind of, in a way, in a fucked up way, I guess. But then like the long-term relevancy of this same level, plotting this out right here, is not just the top side Bollinger Band, but you can see that this is the macro liquid zone that we've been looking at for the last almost 3 years, since January 2018, that Bitcoin's been selling off of rather aggressively. So it would be indicative of a macro change of behavior. You can take it a step further, throw on the volume profile, and you can see that the volume profile really thins out above this level. So we could come up with some areas of interest like 14,000 and 16,000 and 20,000, but as you can see here, that this is in no way, shape, or form even comparable to what we've been looking at throughout this whole range. So if you think Bitcoin's volatile right now, if you think that $1,500 dump on Saturday was scary, hello, my new friend, volatility. Jesus Christ, man. So all these things working together, and And that's essentially what I wanted to focus on today, I suppose. What else do we want to look at? Do we want to look at some more shitcoins? Let's go look at Mr. Ripple's nipples, as I'm sure a lot of people are getting are turning into investors once again. Oh man, I love it, absolutely love it. But Ripple put in a nice run to 30 cents. Still failing to get a closing new weekly high and reverting the trend on a weekly. Confirming a new trend on the weekly until it actually does have a weekly closure above about 29 and a quarter. It is a little bit shaky just because, well, you're in about a 3-year long downtrend right here, and this is kind of the definition of a fucking pump and dump. But don't tell XRP gang that. If it does close above this area right here, I'd look for another test back up towards at the very least 34, 35 cents, and very likely does get continuation towards the next major level, which is going to be actually more so just under 40 cents. So that could be rather interesting here. But again, it's going to mostly depend on what I'd imagine the general health of the markets are here. So if Bitcoin continues upwards and onwards, like gets back to 12,000, we probably do see Ripple and company and all the rest of the shitcoins. Sorry, I would never call Ripple a shitcoin. You have no idea. You have no fucking idea. The comments, whenever I mention Ripple or like other cryptos, especially, there are the most irate comments with. I just don't understand like where they come from. I'm just looking at charts. I'm not judging you as a person. You're probably a fine person. Just as far as charts go, I'm never going to like a chart that goes down for 3 years straight. And more importantly, that goes down about 95.5% for 3 years straight. That is, in my opinion, problematic. I'm not necessarily a fan of that. But if you do love losing money, it's a great chart. Great fucking chart to go long on long term. But for right now, is it going to have a chance to break the weekly trend here? Yeah, actually it will. But probably going to be dependent upon the rest of the crypto market. Okay, all right. But no, banks are going to be using this, and it's going to fucking $539. And Trump's about to announce that Ripple me nipples, baby. You know what I hear? If you put honey on your nipples, the XRP gang will come and lick it off. Reflect on that for a second. While I look at some more shitty charts. Now let's look at some real charts. Euro dollar looking good here. Going to test the top side of the range again. Just looking at this. Wait, where did my drawing tools go? Man, I swear. Oh, that's where they went. They're hiding behind the button. I'd be looking for another sweep of this area right here, 119, a little bit over 119 region. Did get reaccumulated below this trend line right here, so probably another test to the upside. But I do want to caution against this area. While I do think that it tested again, I do think that it'd be very, very relevant to think that a potential major high could be put in here. That is the monthly 200 exponential moving average, and also the long-term downtrend coming in from June 2008 highs. That's 2008. That's more than a 10-year long trend. So I do put quite a bit of weight on that. That also does mean that if it breaks above this level, then I'd be looking for a phenomenal, massive girthy green dildo party for the next few months. To like 1.25. I mean, that's going to be, and maybe more. Shit. Some people are going to be targeting like all the way up here based upon that 135. So take that as you will. Let's go look at triple Qs. New all-time highs printed in yesterday. Is that what we said? I believe that is what we said yesterday. And I'd essentially be holding on to that. I'd look for this to melt up. Another, I don't know, like maybe just under $300 is what it looks like. We could look at Great Britain. I don't know what should we did move up yesterday, just like we said. Did we hit the target? I believe I said just above 6,100 is where I'd be looking towards. I still think that it probably does put in a nice drive towards there. Long term though, this is a very awkward and nasty chart though. So the world, you would, Britain obviously has other things going on with Brexit and whatnot. So I do think that geopolitical type considerations actually need to be really incorporated into this chart. It's obviously a lot weaker than most of the world charts that we do see, but again, I do think that it gets another try up towards a little bit north of 6,100, and then we'll see if that turns into another high. And then I'd get ready for another move back down below 5,800, but I don't feel all that confident on this chart. It's not a chart that I'm actually very used to either. I'm just kind of speaking offhand here. We can go look at gold, new all-time highs. Oh, and it even hit our long-term fucking target. Or sorry, not our long-term target, but our macro target. Holy shit. Sometimes that TA shit actually does work. What the fuck? This was derived, I believe, yeah, off. Oh, okay, yeah. Okay, that's what it's being derived off of. I thought that I was getting it from somewhere else, but no, it's just an algo-driven target right here. Probably does have a short-term pullback off that region, and that's exactly what we're seeing right here. I'd be looking for a range to be established between, whoops, not the advanced VWAP. Nope, stop. I'd be looking for a range to be established here between about 2000 and that 2036 target. And I do think that it could be that this actually is the next medium-term high. I'd want to see how the weekly closes once again. I feel like we've had some pretty damn good reads on gold. Not to toot my own horn or anything like that, but it's just I would caution from getting like too crazy here, just because things have been working pretty damn nicely and trending extremely nicely. But I really would be cautious on this area coming into the weekly closure. Now, if the weekly does close above this region, that being 2033, then I mean, these parabolic, the blow off phase of a parabolic rally can get really fucking crazy. I wouldn't be surprised if 2150 does get hit, on that. But first things first, I want to see the weekly closure now. We've kind of had all the easy targets. Time to kind of just like enjoy that if you are trading that one. Let's see, is anything else worth looking at right now? We're already 40 minutes into this video. We could go back to the I think it was the weekly. Yeah, I think it was a weekly here, and look at the weekly RSI for Bitcoin and just cover this last one thing, which you're probably already familiar about, especially if you're just tuning into this part of the video, anyways. But weekly RSI officially getting into the bullish control zone for the first time since April 2019, last year. And anytime that the weekly RSI has gotten into the bullish control zone, that is actually the beginning of those major massive runs. And going back to our secondary chart, on the Bollinger Bands right here, remember these babies. Remember all the interplays there. There's also a third component of that. Well, actually there's four components of that. The next one is obviously weekly RSI. So we see this area getting into the bullish control zone now for the first time since again back and over here. That was quite literally during this price action. That was literally during this price action right here. This sideways consolidation, kind of what we're looking at right here, at a macro resistance. Everyone was talking about 6,000 being, the humongous resistance that's going to force this one back to the downside. And then what happens? Massive girthy green dildo party for the next couple months to the upside, resulting in like a 2 or 3x from that price point. Alongside weekly Stokes pointing back up again, which are very likely to cross back up to the upside this week, which will inevitably cross back up to the upside this week if we close above 11,131. Again, providing confidence that sideways above 11,000 is essentially constructive over the long period of time. And then historical volatility percentile on the daily contracting during that time, contracting during that the whole time as well. Increasing historical volatility. I got that completely backwards. Increasing historical volatility percentile while that happens. And then if we go over to our entropy as well, we do see that it's essentially going up right now as Bitcoin goes sideways. Again, that is suggesting that the consolidation is constructive. And then if we do see entropy turn down while price action does move up and historical volatility percentile continues to move up, then that's the same reading that we had back and over here too. Historical volatility percentile just shot the fuck up, entropy is coming the fuck down, and then Bitcoin just melts up for the next couple months. So fair enough. That's and so a lot of points there, actually maybe like 5 or 6 components. Bollinger Bands, long-term horizontal resistance, historical volatility percentile, RSI getting to a specific level. What else did we have? I feel like I'm missing a couple more. Entropy, of course, as well. So that's 5. And maybe there's a 6th component, but at the end of the day, I mean, Jesus Christ, Stokes, so that would be 6, I suppose. So yeah, things I'd still be more or less bullish here, is what I'm trying to say in a very short 42-minute video. Anyways, I think it's time to wrap this one up, or actually, let's go look at probabilities really quick. Again, same ranges as yesterday. So let's see how they've switched around here. I'm very curious to see how they switched around here. I would expect that they're going to come more into parity. And yes, we do see them come more into parity. And I'm using 11,500 as my upside resolution versus 10,850 for my downside resolution. The downside resolution has greater implications, admittedly, for this, driving targets essentially like another $1,000 down overall. The upside would imply another move, another test towards around 12,000. Personally speaking, I do think that that next, another move up to 12,000 very likely does break it overall, and then we'd realistically extend that target to like 12.5 to like 12.8 maybe, something like that. We'll talk about that if and when we do get there. I don't think that it all happens in one day, but I guess at the end of the day that would still be $1,000 target anyway. So fair enough. And by the way, on Bali and Pigs Moms right here, they've been turning down this whole way while Bitcoin's been sideways. So it's essentially allowing them to reset. And the error correcting one is actually conversion on itself once again. So suggesting that momentum is waning to the downside. And I'd still be looking at this area right here. Whoops, let's go on this one right here. Closure above this area right here. Looking for another test towards around 12. Closure below 10,850 right here. I'll be looking for targets likely down here. 9,800 with a bounce at 10.5 and maybe even 10.2.5. But yeah, exciting times for Bitcoin and more or less, kind of. And so I think this is a good point to leave off the video, and I would like to wish you well once again. Take care, and until next time.